This episode of WDW Today is being sponsored by All-Star Vacation Homes. And hey, if you're planning your next trip to Walt Disney World and you're saying, boy, I would love a lot more space. I would love to have my own private pool because you know what? Having my own private pool means no annoying kids. But, well, only my annoying kids. Well, perfect opportunity is All-Star Vacation Homes because, among other great options that All-Star Vacation Homes have, they also feature private pools. Every house has their own pool. So that means no one else's annoying kids, just yours in the pool. You can go in there whenever you want. You want to go in the middle of the night? No problem. Morning? No problem. Regardless, you have the hot tub. You'll have the whole pool to yourself. No worries, right? No kids taunting your kids. No your kids taunting other kids and getting kicked out. It's just your kids annoying you. So why not try them out right now? Go to www.allstarvacationhomes.com.
This is Walt Disney World Today. Give us 5 minutes and we'll give you the world.
It's Friday, January 21st, 2010, and this is episode 828 of WDW Today. I'm Matt Hochberg of StudioCentral.com. Joining me on today's show is Mike Scopa, a senior feature writer and blogger for allears.net. Welcome, Mike.
How'd you like a job teaching kids new routines?
Wow.
How'd you like a job teaching kids new routines?
I got nothing.
Timekeeper?
Nope. Pre-show.
Cranium Command.
Pre-show. Think
Cranium
of
Command?
pre-shows.
Cranium
Nope.
Command. That's a good one.
I got nothing. What is it, Mike?
I'll tell you who says it, and then you can tell me. James Cagney says it.
Ah, that's a great movie ride.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is that the pre-show? Ah, good one. I didn't think about that. Very nice, Mike. I'm impressed. Also joins on today's show is Henry Work, a developer for TouringPlans.com and the host of the Beta Mouse podcast. And Henry, what's it like doing the show with Katie?
Oh, it's a joy and an honor every week that she blesses us with her appearance.
Nice. Very nicely played, sir. On today's show, we're going to be talking about attractions that have been changed a little tweaked, if you will. Henry, would you like to go into a little more detail as to the topic for this evening?
Sure. So I really like attractions. I really like big e-ticket rides, and it seems that a lot of e-tickets go through a period of adjustment during the sort of soft opening period and right afterwards, where they, might tone things down a little bit. They might tweak things, or maybe over time, certain effects that people once loved, they don't no longer notice them there. So I thought that would be a good episode topic.
Absolutely, and that's there's a lot of attractions I know that come to mind instantly when you say that, Henry. Mike, what's one that comes to your mind immediately?
Well, going way back when Disney's Animal Kingdom opened up, what we know now as Dinosaur was originally called Countdown to Extinction. And it was the first of its kind in Disney World. And so the Imagineers were trying to estimate how realistic, without being rough, that ride could be. And during the testing phase, they constantly were playing around with the vehicles. And those of you who have ridden Dinosaur, you know how rough it can be. Matt, someday when you ride it, you'll understand. So what they had done over the years, I think maybe basically the first year, is that they would poll guests and using their own judgment, try to figure out what could be the most realistic ride experience that they could give the guests without it being too extreme. And so Countdown to Extinction over the first year of existence went through some changes, and now it's called Dinosaur. And although it feels rough, it's not as rough as what it used to be. I can tell you that.
Well, I always cried on it, so I can't really have much recollection of it. But Henry, what about you? Do you remember it being different?
I don't remember it being different. I did actually go there really early in 1998. What I find interesting there is that it's essentially the same ride vehicle system that they use in Indiana Jones Adventure in Disneyland.
Same track, isn't it?
Same track, essentially. Like I personally think Indiana Jones is like 10 times better. But what's interesting is that why they had to tone it down. You figure they'd sort of be able to know sort of the thresholds for the average guest.
Right.
Having the ride vehicle technology. It's not like it was the first one, so.
I've heard
that many times.
Yeah, I think that when we're looking at a ride experience, we're looking not just at the ride vehicle, and I probably should have qualified a little bit more. It's not just the ride vehicle, but the actual ride environment.
Right.
So it's the combination of the two, so that it would not be too intense. So it's a combination of volume, and I still think they need to change the volume in there. Volume, lighting, and ride vehicle. So all three.
Of Felicia Rashad. No, just kidding. I feel the same way. It's for me, it's still too intense. I'm with Hotchberg on this one. That ride scares the crud out of me.
Thank you. Vindication. Okay, so that's one. One that I was thinking of instantly was Mission Space, and that one came out, and then a couple of people got sick and or died on it, or almost died. And Disney, they invested quite a bit of money in this, and it was obviously very early on in its infancy, so it wasn't like they could just, tear the attraction down and call it a wash. So they created this, what we have now, which is they have the the same version, which is the orange, or you go for green. Is it green? Right? Green?
Orange and green, yeah.
Yeah. And green is the low-key version. Right. Well, it's more like riding, it basically hardly moves at all. You still see the same film and everything. It just doesn't really. You don't have that spinning sensation, which gives you that sensation of gravity and all the stuff that evidently causes those issues. Now that you have a choice between the two, and I'm okay with it. I think I did it one time just to see what it was like. The green version. I greatly prefer the orange version. I think obviously it's much more interesting and makes the attraction really. But the reason why I like it is because again they kept both options out there. They didn't just make the attraction really lame and go for just the totally tone it down. They gave guests two options to do that. I like that. I thought that was pretty smart of them. It gives people who can enjoy it, don't have any health ailments or anything like that, the opportunity to really experience the attraction as Imagineers intended it to be. And for those who want to still be able to ride it, but are, maybe get motion sickness, maybe are not comfortable with it, or are concerned about that, there's an option for them as well. So I think it kind of satisfies both camps in that regard.
Right. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe my impression is that Mission Space Orange is not even as wild of an attraction, wild as a ride as the original was. So I don't know if maybe theoretically there could be a Mission Space Red, coming around the corner. I highly doubt it, but that would be
cool. What's another attraction that comes to mind?
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead, Scuba.
No, go ahead. That's right.
One thing I find fascinating is Kilimanjaro safaris. They've changed the script to Kilimanjaro safaris 18 billion times, it seems like. And originally, according to the Imagineering book and the Making of the Animal Kingdom book, the original storyline was actually included a sort of a sad ending. If you haven't ridden safaris, there's a storyline about Big Red and Little Red, and that story itself has sort of gone away over time. It used to be much more of a consistent story, and actually at the end, I guess to sort of drill in the point of conservation and the dangers and the issue of poaching, that actually Little Red died at the end. I can't remember if it was Little Red or Big Red. Can't remember if it was the mother or the kid, but apparently they were doing that through soft openings, and they had to just completely scrap it because it was getting really bad guest feedback. And then the other thing that's kind of sad about the safaris, not only sort of it losing its really strong storyline, is some of the effects in the last scene are kind of broken. I used to remember a lot more sort of water and stuff like that, but they used to have this car that drove by, and a machine gun was sort of shooting at you in this audio animatronic car that drove by, and then when you came around the corner, they'd actually have a real cast member who would be standing out there, and he was kind of an extra, and he'd be saying, "Oh no, Little Red's fine. We've got them." And they cut that even a few years ago. And originally, when you think of it, you're hoping it's someone who looks like they could be an African safari warden. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think most of the time you get some college member program person from Iowa. So.
Yeah, I remember when they changed the script of it, and that's certainly been changed. And I forgot exactly what the reasoning behind it was. I think a lot of people, I don't know. I don't think anyone actually bought into the whole idea to begin with. I thought it was and they changed. Remember the whole thing is nobody calls them the warden
Thompson
yelled
Gazelles.
No one calls them Thompson Gazelles. They're Tommies. Like he was almost in a condescending tone to the lady there in the video. I think what it's done is it's given more emphasis to the safari rather than the story. Whereas I think before they tried to make the story more important than the safari, and I think I agree with that change, that it was kind of needed, that it was a little too heavy on the story. And it wasn't needed because obviously people are there to see the animals. No one really cares about the faux story that's going on in the background. What do you think of the change, Scopa?
You talking about what Henry just talked about?
Yeah. Those changes with Kilimanjaro safaris.
I think that it's something that is noticeable. It's funny because you've got a lot of attractions that made subtle changes, and then you've made some changes that are not so subtle. And what Henry said, I think a lot of people noticed that, and I think that is something that was first carried out a little bit with another subtle change that was made a long time ago with the Walt Disney World Express, the train that goes around the Magic Kingdom. Because I can remember a long time ago when I rode that back in the 70s or whatever, when you came across that portion of the track that had Indians, the dialogue was a little bit different. Now they're friendly natives or whatever, but back then they weren't.
That's a great point. I forgot about that change.
Yeah. So that's so when I think of what Henry says, I think about how that. I mean, it's a politically correct change that was made, and that Walt Disney World Express ride went through that political correct change. So
yeah, that's like the change they made. Speaking of that, that's like what they did on Pirates of the Caribbean, where the pirates used to chase the women, and now the women chase the pirates.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, and I mean. I think the Indian one for the railroad, you know what, that one was kind of okay, because again, now they kind of themed it to Pocahontas. It's not just that they're friendly, it's like, if you listen, you can hear Pocahontas' song, and then you hear her singing, and that kind of makes more sense than just here's a bunch of Indians. Synergy! Exactly. Somewhere Eisner is very happy. But the one for Pirates I actually think is kind of silly. I mean, all right, I think it's, for one thing, not that it's a museum piece and a historically accurate, piece of history that we should all use as reference points, but I do think that, I don't think there was any harm in having the pirates chase the women, because I think, first of all, it probably was more accurate than anything. And second, I think that it doesn't depict anything terrible. Like, it's not like they're showing, something really scandalous in terms of what the pirates are doing to them. They're just chasing them. For all we know, they're chasing them for, we know why they're chasing them, but I think it's okay. I don't think it's any worse than the fact that they're auctioning off women in the very next scene, which connotates sexual slavery, which is, I think, kind of almost worse than some other possibilities. So again, I don't see a problem with it. But again, in the new one, it doesn't bother me. I mean, I kind of don't pay much attention to it. Yeah. Anyway, that was a long explanation. What do you guys think about, what's another attraction that, how about Figment? Journey into Imagination? Remember they had the original Figment, which we all kind of, Journey into Imagination with the Timekeeper, with the Dreamfinder and Figment, right. And then Disney spent a lot of time redoing it, and we had something that was really not well received, right, Scopa?
It was not well received, but unlike the other attractions that we've been talking about, that one was just something that the guests did not like. There was nothing offensive. There was nothing too intense. It was just one of those attractions where I think it was the first time in Walt Disney World that you received backlash because an original attraction had been replaced. And I think it really was something that I think the Imagineers did not expect. And Henry can probably relate to this. If you change anything, if you change any original attraction in Disneyland, you better run for your life. But if you do it out here on the East Coast, Henry, it's not as bad because, we're not talking a theme park that has Walt's thumbprint on it, number one. And number two, it's like 55 years old.
Yeah. It doesn't have a million card-carrying annual pass holders that will come and beat you with them if you change any attractions.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean that second one, when the second edition of the attraction came out, and then they had to quickly close it to redo it for the third time. That was, I think, the first time that I can remember a really vocal response from the Walt Disney World fan base where they said, okay, you guys have crossed the line in terms of just cheapo attractions. Now, since then, they've also put out some really duds as well. But at least at that point, it was an interesting response that there was so much response that how bad that was that Imagineers had to quickly act and put out redo it again.
They took Figment out of the second when they changed it, and it's funny because I actually have a polo shirt that has Figment on it. It says Figment is back, and I actually bought it in Epcot. I bought it at the Imagination Pavilion. So that when they did the second change, they brought him back. The biggest complaint was that Figment was gone, and it was one of those figures that when you took him away, people were complaining, something that we would not see. I'm making a segue right here, Matt. Something we would not see if they did that with Stitch. Now, when you talk about Stitch's Great Escape, that is housed in a building that has seen 2 attractions go through some changes. When Len and I happened to be among the first to see to attend the first soft opening of Stitch's Great Escape, and I can remember Len and I talking to one of the lead Imagineers, and he said, we're still tweaking it, and they did write a different script, although mostly it was for the pre-show, but it still was somewhat too intense to be called a kid-friendly kind of attraction. And what's really funny about that is that the attraction that was in that building prior to Stitch's Great Escape was Alien Encounter, Extraterrestrial Encounter. And I can remember that when that first came out, Michael Eisner was not too crazy about it, thought it was too intense. I think that it was in the wrong theme park, but they had to tone that down, and still it was kind of too intense for a lot of preteens. So it's really funny that building has 2 attractions that have gone through those kinds of tweaks, because it just wasn't hitting the right tone,
Absolutely. When you one of the attractions that I thought of actually was the Backlot Tour, and not so much the content of it being toned down, but the attraction itself. If you recall, the original Backlot Tour was 2 hours long, and I think
really,
it used to be 2 hours long because it encompassed what today we would consider the Backlot Tour, the Magic of Disney Animation, and an attraction that's not there anymore, which was then called Backstage Pass, and that's gone now. Yeah. And it was 2 hours long. There was like 1 bathroom break, and I think, again, it was too long, and I guess really didn't have. They wanted the content, they just didn't want to invest that kind of time in it. And so that's what they did was they said, okay, so they broke up the attraction. They created the Backlot Tour, which just became the water tank and the tram. Then they created Backstage Pass, which was the attraction which would you walk through the sound stages and check out what's going on over there. And then you had Magic Disney Animation, which is what you have currently, which is the one where you used to show the animators animating and the film there with Robin Williams and Walter Cronkite. Now it shows the Mushu film. And that was an attraction that, it wasn't so much about it being too intense or anything like that. It was literally too much of an attraction, and they had to break it up into what ultimately became 3 different attractions, and now is down to 2, and both are not very good anymore. But that's neither here nor there. Another ride that has been toned down.
So here's a couple obscure ones. One, People Mover. They changed the text to it last year. Does anyone remember this?
Yes.
The narration, they removed Tom Morrow, and apparently they then reinserted the name Tom Morrow, but wasn't sort of, paging Mr. Tom Morrow. That got a lot of fanboy flack, I think. And another one recently was, have you ever seen Miyuki, the candy art in Epcot?
Yes.
So recently, I think in the last year, they decided for sanitary reasons to not actually give away the candy art that she gives at the end, which raised the ire of some people as well.
Yeah, I'd say so. That's just being cheap, I think.
Think so? I don't think you think they sell those afterwards? I don't think they can. I think it was like a health code issue.
You think that's what it was?
That's my impression, at least.
I don't know. I guess that's true. It's not like they take it and repurpose it somewhere else.
Right.
That's fair enough.
Have you guys talked about the Yeti, the Everest Yeti?
Have we? Huh. Well, that's not them not them saying that it's not as good. It's broken and they're too cheap to go fix it.
Right. Yeah. I don't know. I think there's another one that I always thought in Splash Mountain. There's this one audio animatronic that goes through various phases of functioning. Do you remember it's the Brer Rabbit, and he's hiding behind this hill, and
then he hops along
it's
with
an animatronic, then he hops along.
Yeah.
It's basically, for me, riding on it's 50-50 whether or not that's working or not.
It's the one of the customers I used to know who worked there said it was the $1 million animatronic because it cost somewhere like close to that amount of money to build initially, and it constantly breaks. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah,
that always is a bummer.
Well, one thing they do, is interesting, kind of a microcosm of this whole topic, Henry, on Splash Mountain. It's not so much they tone it down all the time, but they do tone down Splash Mountain if the weather is not cooperating. If it's cold out, they don't close Splash Mountain. They'll just turn off stage one is like turning off the water cannons. So when you go down the big drop, you don't get as wet. And the second option is they turn off the flume completely. This is when it's really cold out. So there's no water going down the main chute. So really, it's a glorified roller coaster. You just go down and woo, it's you don't really get wet at all because again, there's no water in that part of the ride. And that's again to make the attraction more attractive to people who are in the parks when the weather is really cold out.
Right. Definitely. Scopey, you were saying something about Light Splitters action?
Yeah, I remember, again, it was one of those attractions which I was fortunate enough to attend the media event, and I can remember that the media event had some Daredevil things going on, and when that was in, I think it was April 2005, and then in either July, I think it was July or August, I came back, and some of the things had been toned down. And I think I've gone once since then, and it just doesn't seem to be as daredevilish as it was. I mean, I'm all for being safe and everything, but it's interesting how the big splash was all the Daredevil stunts and the cars and the jet skis and the motorcycles and everything, and now you don't see that much. So it's interesting how that has toned down over the years. But I think there's one more attraction that we want to talk about that's the grandfather of them all.
What's that?
I'll let Henry talk about the attraction in Future World.
We're talking about Captain EO, right? I'm just kidding.
We're talking about Test Track.
Yeah, Test Track. So one thing that I thought was pretty interesting, and this could be complete hearsay, is that Test Track went through a long period of construction and testing, and they had to go through, apparently they had lots of technical issues. One issue that I thought that was kind of interesting that came up was that originally it was designed that the vehicle system itself is designed to go much faster than you actually go. Sort of on the last stretch, you sort of top out at about 60, 65, am I right? Yep. And I think apparently that the technology is capable of going upwards of 90. I mean, really, when Test Track seems so fast, but you go faster on the highway. So I thought that it was kind of interesting that it could have gone faster, upwards of almost 90, but they had to tone it down because the end ramp would have had to have a banked curve that would be too high of an angle for evac situations, especially for wheelchair accessible issues. I
had the opportunity of speaking with one of the lead engineers in Epcot last month, and he told me that Test Track is the most engineeringly challenging attractions of all Walt Disney World, and each one of those cars is an attraction in itself. And when one of those cars has an issue or a problem, it takes a while when the attraction is closed down for a while. It's because they have to move one of those cars to there are only 2 points on that track where they can remove the car. So it takes a while to do that, but that's a very, very challenging attraction. And from what I recall, it took about a year before they had everything just right, and they figured out how to do it, how fast they could go, what the toleration rate was for the tires. That was a big issue at one point. The tires and the software was an issue. It was then, if they could run the attraction during rainstorms, it was just a real challenging attraction. And it took them a long time. Once, even after the official opening day, it took them a long time to get that just right. And even now, even today, it's still a challenge to have all those cars operating as at peak to move the crowds through that attraction.
Right, and it's interesting that despite all of its technical issues, they decided to bring it back, and they put it in Tokyo Disney Sea in 2001, the Journey to the Center of the Earth attraction, which is apparently ridiculously awesome. But then they're bringing the same technology back again 10 years later after that for Cars Land in DCA, and it's going to be 2 dueling test tracks that have 2 tracks right next to each other.
Wow.
What?
Crazy.
Yeah, you never know which one's going to win each time. So you're sort of racing against the car next to you, and you're not really sure which one will be the victor.
Huh. It's like that game they play in the 7th inning in baseball games when you're in between innings and they have like the racing of the, like everyone has a different, like in the Yankees it's the subway race, and Milwaukee it's the sausage race.
It's definitely the inspiration.
And let me tell you, in the Yankees it's always the 6th train that wins. I'm just saying. Well, that's it for us today. I want to thank our sponsor, All-Star Vacation Homes, for sponsoring this episode. And certainly if you're looking for a great deal on some fabulous vacation homes, check out All-Star Vacation Homes right now. They've got great options for you, regardless of how many people you have. You got a family of 4, family of 8, family of 12, a touring plans group of 20, which has been known to happen, by the way. You get a really good deal on a vacation home. Check them out right now at allstarvacationhomes.com. If you want to find our older episodes, read our show notes, or send us your comments, you can visit us online at wdwtoday.com. For Lentas of Mike Scopa, Mike Newell, and Henry Work, I'm Matt Hotchford. We'll see you on the next show.